Hello, everybody. If you are streaming in, just going to give it a minute to get started here. I want to check my setup as usual, just make sure everything's working. And I've got quite a bit prepared today. I probably won't get through all of it because there's, in fact, just so much that I'm going to try and cover. But I will give us a quick dive into the usual touch on some news. And this is probably going to be a two-part stream today to tomorrow because the amount of preparation that I have going for this one, it's a lot. And I want to make it, I want to do it justice. So first thing, just checking my stream real quick to make sure everything's working. And good morning, kitten. Let's see what we see over here. There we go. There we go. So it's working. Just wanted to make sure before I started. Today is a little bit different in terms of the back end of things, as you've seen so far a few times where I've had some problems with crashing in the middle. I'm praying that doesn't happen again. I switched from OBS to Stream Deck, I think it is, and it's just a different version of OBS, but it's a paid product. I haven't bought the paid product yet, so if it crashes, that's why probably. But it lets me do the scene changes, which is really good, and that allows me to talk to you guys. And let's just test one of this. There's a scene change right there, so just making sure it's working. And first and foremost, since today is now that we've got folks joining in, and I've got a couple folks saying hello and good morning. Any other issues with sound? I noticed that somebody's saying that I have an echo, but let's see if that's anything I don't know if there's anything I can do to fix it other than, yeah, I don't think so. Unless it's the desktop audio. Hang on, let's just see here. Got Rodecaster and Brio. That's the problem. How's that? Did that get rid of the echo? Let me just talk a little bit and see if that fixed anything. All right, try one more item. I've muted two things now, so hopefully that will solve that. One more try. Anything on the echo or still echo? This is the new stream software I got to get used to. So hoping it works. I'm going to just plow on just in case everything is ironed out. Looks like you could probably still hear me because my audio bars are jumping. Yep, no echo, good. So it was actually this new software that it has multiple audio sources. I found out the hard way that two of them were not muted properly, and there you go. And I'm going to just change in place. Sorry. Thanks for helping me with my technical difficulties in the early part of this. And to begin with, I'd like to just start off by saying, let's have a quick sip. The second sip, I assume that folks have already had a cup of coffee probably, and it's 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. But for those of you on the West Coast, around 8 a.m., if that's where you're at, let's have that second sip. And this is my half quart of coffee that I usually drink, and cheers to you. Wet your whistle before you start talking, So we're going to talk about some interesting things today. I'm going to be very selective here on the news because I'm going to only focus on the news that specifically ties in to what is happening in the content that I'm going to talk about towards the end. So the content that I'm going to be talking about is about AI, and it's very specific. It's actually a pretty big topic that we're going to talk about. So thank you. Yes, you're my bald. That's absolutely right. I appreciate all of that. And for those of you who don't get the reference, if you haven't been on the Scott Adams streams, Scott always had somebody in the background, a guy named Paul, who said thumbs up on the audio and everything's good. So tomorrow I shouldn't have the issues that I had today because this, like I said, this is a brand new software, first time streaming the whole thing. And, just want to make sure that everything's working properly before I get going. So there's a whole bunch of stuff out there, cool stuff going on. Aircraft stuff. I saw something the other day about China actually having VTOL helicopters already in cities that are basically drones. It's a real thing. It's like an air taxi. I don't know, who knows how expensive it is, whatever, we'll see. But I know we have a couple of companies doing the same for us here in the US. So that'll be interesting when that comes about. Now some of these things, we'll have to do this one tomorrow. I'll dig into this and we'll bookmark it. Matter of fact, I'm going to take that page and we'll set it aside for tomorrow because I do want to dig into that one. It's a big deal, but we'll come back and talk about that later. So if we go back out and I'm specifically picking on a couple of things. So today, we have the Artemis 2 delay, which is pushing it back into March. So I'll be able to go see that with somebody I know, hopefully. This is the same launch that we missed a few years ago when we really wanted to see it and the delays happened and we couldn't see it. Now I think that's going to happen and it's the same rocket. So it'll be great. And this, I'm not going to get into some of these other ones having to do with the politics today, because today is a very interesting day. So here we go. A little bit more on the expansion of Starlink. This is a big one that's going to be associated with what I'm talking about. So Starlink, from a satellite perspective, is covering almost the entire planet with the exception of Russia. So if you look at the Starlink coverage map, it's actually it's pretty big. I mean, it's the globe. So if you think about a satellite coverage for internet that's available in every state and every country practically around the world except for Russia. Russia's got their own satellite set up. Fortunately for them, they have a launch capability, so they can do that. But nobody's got coverage like Starlink at this point. And the reason that that's a big deal, we're getting probably 300 megabits per second. That's why you can see me relatively clearly here. I use Starlink. And my connection, I will tell you, when I had cable, it went out every other day. It was always going out. And they promised 1,000 megabits per second. And if you did a speed check point to point, you could get within the Comcast franchise, you could get 1,000 megabits per second, and call it a gigabit throughput speeds. However, like I said, the service was always shaky, and once you went outside the bandwidth of their, like if you crossed over to AT&T's networks from Comcast, you didn't get that gigabit half the time. It went down to 300, 500, even down to like 150, 200, depending. And I noticed whenever I was doing Zoom calls and all of this, I always had lag. I had problems with video pixelation. I'd get kicked out of calls regularly. So it's one of those things where it just wasn't that stable, wasn't that good. Now, I did spend a number of years on AT&T fiber. That was also a gigabit speed. And instead of being a gigabit down and 30 up, 30 megabits per second up, I'm going to give me a second here. Sorry, I'm just trying to clear the throat, as it were. So the gigabit per second down and up that you could get with AT&T made it much more stable. But once again, as soon as you hopped out of their kind of fiber zones, that would always drop. Now, what I'm finding, and a reason for that is because generally speaking, between your computer and whatever you're trying to connect to, there's always somewhere in a neighborhood of 12 hops. You go to the local ISP, the next jump to the Metroplex aggregator, to the something state level, then something regional like the Southeast, and then something over the next regional zone that you're trying to get into, down to their metro, down to their city, down to their regional, your local node, then to the other device, whatever it is, whatever server that is. So you always have these 12 hops, generally speaking. It can be more than 12 or less than 12, depending if you're lucky. If you happen to be going on infrastructure that's all on one network, so you have AT&T fiber and everything that you're connecting to just happens to be on AT&T fiber, that's really small, fast, and very reliable. Same thing with Comcast, small, fast, and reliable if you're on their network for the resources you're connecting to. But that's never how it works. We always go out to things way beyond us. When I was, the work that I was doing, I often had to connect to European servers. I often did presentations for people in Singapore and Australia, and you're doing massive jumps and always had tons of lag. Now, lag is, if you were playing a video game, as an example, you'd be, I told you about this big stompy robots game that we used to play, and the robots would be running along. And in the game, when you had lag, your robot would look like it's running, and then all of a sudden it would jump, and you would suddenly be like 50 feet further down than you thought you were, because the lag said, oh, you were here and I lost track of you. And then I picked up where you are over here. And as soon as it reconnects, it jumps you over, it moves you physically inside the video game like you've gone 500 yards. And, and the sad part is the other people in the game don't have that lag. So while you think you're just running along, they're shooting at you and you take a bunch of damage. And by the time you appear on the other end, you appear and you've been damaged and you're out of commission, right? So it's like this big, huge lag, and boom, you show up and you're dead, right? Just like that in the middle of a game. And so it doesn't matter in a game, it's just a game, but it does matter when I'm having a conversation with you and all of a sudden I cut out 20 times, you can only hear a stuttering voice, and then all of a sudden you can hear me again. And I just talked through a whole paragraph of content and you heard nothing, right? It's gone. So that's what this lag issue is. Now, even though the speed on Starlink is like anywhere between 200 and 300 megabits per second instead of 1,000, the speed difference is augmented by the fact that there's no lag. So when I hop on that antenna, I go up to the satellites, there's no jumps, and it comes down to the closest data center access point to wherever the server is. So I end up with like 3 hops, maybe 4 hops total to get to the device that I'm trying to get to. So the throughput, even though the speed is way slow compared to fiber and like Google's max speed, it's no lag. It's no jumps. You can play one of those video games, you'll never have those big jumps. So that's why it's such a big deal. And that means we're connected real time, very much real time, to every other country in the world in a way that we've never been able to connect before. When I was playing those games, they had 3 servers, one for Europe, one for Australia, Asia, and one for the US. If I hopped on a US server, I didn't have lag. If I jumped on a European or an Asian server, I had jittery game the entire time. And the same thing goes for video conferencing. So when you think about that, the perspective is that we're getting a massive amount of throughput, just an incredible amount of throughput. But now we're going to see data centers in space, right? We know that XAI was just purchased by SpaceX. So that means everything behind Grok and all of the data centers related to Grok are now going to not just have the gigantic 200 to 500,000 GPU data center that they bought over here in Tennessee, and then they're building another one in Texas. Those two data centers that have the largest number of GPUs online for AI processing right now for one service, they're going to expand exponentially because we're going to put those things in orbit. And because they're in orbit, there'll be zero lag. Your connection to the AI server is going to be doggone near instantaneous. So that's going to be the exponential jump. And so I'm going to use this as an opportunity to start talking a little bit about what I'm going to present to you here today. So, and I'm not going to be able to finish the whole thing, I think, like I said, because this is, it's a big topic, and I have some other pieces that I want to cover before it's all done. Now, this is AI 2027. This is a research paper that was put out in June-ish of 2025. And, you know, what you need to know about this is projecting a forecast. It's projecting where things are going to go with AI as compute increases and as the capabilities of the tool increase. So to begin with, you know, this is a fictional scenario. So, for some, it's going to feel like a bit of a doom and gloom thing, but it also has a positive outcome. It's not just a negative outcome. So I don't want you to look at this and go, "Oh my God, horror, horror." It's a lot more than that. So in this scenario, they're talking about this thing that you hear talked about a lot called the singularity happening by 2027. Now, there's a person, this Joshua Bengio, who recommends that you understand this prediction a little bit because it opens up a lot of important questions that illustrate the potential impacts of what's going to happen. And here's the scenario. There will be, as a result of all of this AI and compute coming online, an intelligence explosion. So we have already, you know, this is based on ChatGPT. We went to ChatGPT 4, Grok 3, you know, and various iterations for Gemini 3 and things like that. And, you know, that has reached a point here in 2025 that we have some stumbling agents. Now, some of those stumbling agents actually didn't make it into this conversation, but belong in here, and I'm gonna talk about them, even though I couldn't get them into the presentation in time for today's presentation. But we're talking about a timeline of things that started in 2025, what's going to be happening here in 2026, and where we're going in 2027. So the idea in the starting line of this scenario has to do with what happened in 2025. So in 2025, we have these AI bots that are starting to work, agents that can go out there and do things for you. And the agents, the way that you know, when you think about using Grok as a just an AI, you talk to it, right? You ask a question. So I'm going to just cover that one section that I was talking about with the thing that didn't make it into the presentation. I'm just going to grab this real quick. So this is kind of the missing piece that's in the conversation that we need to talk about. So when we come back over here, what happened when we got to the end of 2025? Suddenly, these stumbling agents, we started off with, and it's really January 2026 that the time is the Molt bot, Claude bot scenario occurred. But in this scenario, we knew that agents were kicking off and they were getting to the point where you could say, go scrape a bunch of data for me off the internet and then compose that, compile it, and give me some information. And I'm going to give you an example of that right here. So I used an agent this morning to do a little bit of research for me. And we're going to get into that research in the deck in a second. But I basically said, I want you to tell me all the features of all of the, and this is an easier one to read, even though there's a lot of a lot of dense text inside the cells. The columns are what matter here. So you have Grok with Grok 4, Grok Super Heavy, which is a higher level version that's actually significantly more powerful. Gemini with all of its capabilities that we're going to talk about in a minute. ChatGPT and Microsoft Copilot. So those are the big four. It's 4 plus Grok Heavy, because I did the search on Grok and Grok broke out Grok Heavy because it's its own extra big thing. So those four, the big four, are the tools that are out there. And when you go out and do research like this and you pull all of that information together, that's what one agent could do for you. So this was nothing but a prompt. And I actually have a pretty standardized process of doing prompts to compare products. So a lot of times I do work with procurement groups, and they want to find what is the next thing I need to buy for my corporation, for my company. And when that happens, an old school procurement process is that you get somebody in procurement who's part of the in-house research group, and they say, all right, we need a new semi truck. We're going to go buy a new semi for our business. Why? Because there's new semis suddenly on the market, things like the Tesla semi, and there's 2 or 3 other semi manufacturers that are doing electric semis compared with the 4 or 5 gas semis. And the procurement team is going to say, well, why would we research that? Cost, right? We want to know, is the cost to operate a semi cheaper if it's electric or more expensive? And so that might be the reason that they go out and they say, let me do a bunch of research. So you do this research and you go grab information about all of the individual semi manufacturers. Old school way of doing that, go to their website, download all their white papers, make a grid, compare them side by side, put all of the information in, research, do a comparison, then call all of those vendors and tell each one of those vendors to give you a presentation, and then maybe even demo the product and try it out. And then the procurement team would make a decision, decide which one they're going to go use, and then issue a purchase order and go buy some of the product. So that's the typical work process that would occur. Using using Grok in this case, I was able to do the first 2 steps of that whole research process with one prompt, and it took me about 30 seconds. Usually the research side, when you do it in a corporation, the research alone can take a month to 2 months, because you have to gather all the data, put it all into some kind of digestible format so that you can talk to executives about it. And people who are not experts on those semis need to be educated, brought up to speed. You don't even need to do that. It's so fast now to be able to short circuit that whole procurement process and bring it down to a 1 or 2 step process to find which vendors we're going to start with. And then you can do vendor research on them, and then you can do deep dives on each individual product. And as a matter of fact, the area of specialty that I have is where a procurement team would issue an RFP for one of those vendors. If I were one of these vendors, I could actually answer all of the questions that the customer procurement department sends out instantly with my AI in-house, so that I can actually turn around the information. Because when each one of these companies is queried by a corporation to say, I want to know about your product, tell me all of the details, give me the security information I need to know. That process, the answering process, usually, again, that takes weeks to months. And individuals have to sit down and muddle through answering every single one of these technical questions about a product. Whereas using AI, if you have an AI capable response tool, you can narrow that down to 5 minutes, right? So, and that's the side of the business that I've been on mostly, is helping customers answer all of these RFPs in minutes, right? That's the goal. But the reason that this all comes into play is because, I'm just illustrating for you a couple of things that bots get used for: scraping information, grabbing things. But AI generally is not even with the bots, they stumble, right? They're not perfect. So, and as an example, if you were to place an order, you might end up getting $4,800 worth of burritos when all you were really doing is trying to buy one thing. So if you let the AI agent do it, it doesn't necessarily guarantee you the kind of success you're looking for. And, the idea is you want to say, plan my travel, and it just lays out the whole travel plan for you, makes all the purchases, and all you have to do is get on the right, get on the bus, get on the plane, whatever, and it's all good. In reality, you end up with one process ordering the incorrect quantity of something. The next one, it breaks somewhere along the line, and you don't know where it broke because it's somewhere in one of the agents. So in theory, the bots work, but it doesn't guarantee anything. Now, the story here for us, this illustration is that the idea with the scenario, right? This AI 2027 scenario is that there's going to be a company, and the reason that I went down the path to explain the 4 companies is because here in the US, we're not doing just one company. We have 4 huge AI companies. It's OpenAI, Copilot for Microsoft, Grok, and Gemini, right? So all 4 of those players are the ones we actually have on our side. And when you hear what's going on in China, the only one you hear about is DeepMind. I know there are others, but that's the big one, right? And it's state backed. But here's the difference. Here in the US, we have what this one company was going to be called. The scenario plays out that this one company is OpenBrain. It's really, the idea is OpenAI ChatGPT. When this was originally built, that was the only AI company when this study was done that was really ahead of everybody else. Now, arguably, ChatGPT and OpenAI are actually behind, as is Copilot, as compared to Google and Grok. Grok is the lead when it comes to the number crunching. And when you look at the massive integration of applications, Gemini is leading the pack for sure. So, we've got 4 companies that we have on the side of the incumbent over here in the US. And then this was, they used the fake company name of DeepSent, but they were really kind of pointing to DeepSeek. So, and it's using 10% of the world's compute. Over on our side, we're using 20 to 30% of the world's compute for our tools. The difference between our strategy and China's strategy, for the most part, is that we're automating R&D. We are automating and leveraging our tools to go deep on R&D and putting billions of dollars behind it to make that happen. The strategy of China is more related to concentration of compute. So they have this major area that they focus on. And when I say, I'm going to say that this is what they're doing, what I mean is this is what this scenario says they're doing. So don't think that that's exactly what China's doing. It's simply where they think they're going. Now, we're effectively 6 months ahead of China because we have so many compute areas and also so many apps and app development areas. We're probably going to race ahead more than a 6-month gap for a period of time. But it doesn't, with AI, it doesn't take any time at all to catch up. It literally, Grok comes out with a new model, then Gemini comes out with a new model, and then OpenAI and so on. It's like a cascading every week to every month. New models are coming out. So they're constantly leapfrogging each other by a couple of points. And, that's just the way it's going to be. It's continuous. So, but the whole point of this is right now, because of the way this is going, we effectively have a nation state geopolitical race to superintelligence. This race is giving us, benefits, clearly, and of course the danger, because what happens if, we'll get into that, but what happens if something goes wrong? Now, Here's an example of the players on the US side. And I just want to quickly go through this idea so that you get a sense for the kind of tools that are out there. And I will say that the ChatGPT and Microsoft tool bundles are a little lighter, and I'll explain why in a second. So Grok is really kind of very heavy in terms of AI compute. Its primary focus and primary strength is data aggregation and just muscling through all of the different compute types. So core reasoning and maximal truth seeking, math and science and coding, that's their biggest strength. Gemini is neck and neck with them. There's almost an imperceptible difference on that front, but there is a slight lead that Grok has on a regular basis. ChatGPT is getting up there. They probably were the first to be like super agent oriented and having little things that could go off and do tasks for you, but their core reasoning is while exceptional and best in class, is often falling behind a little bit what Grok has. They don't have, I think they have 30 to 40% of the actual back-end compute that Grok has. So as a result, it's less. Now, Microsoft Copilot is behind primarily, they're not terribly behind. They have their whole Azure stack, Azure being all of the data centers that they have. That is a massive footprint of data centers. One of the reasons that there's a player in here that's not on this chart, and they're a hidden player because we don't hear about them as much, and that is Amazon. So Amazon has this massive compute stack and some amazing AI, but it's all heavy corporate, and so we don't see them on a consumer side so much. And I'm really talking mostly about what you would see as a user out there on the consumer side. So Microsoft, their strategy is really around the endpoint. They're around your desktop, your computer. And because of that, you're going to see capabilities that are tied heavily to Microsoft Office and to your operating system on your computer that make the use of your computer, your laptop, your desktop, a really, really positive, powerful experience. Apple weighs in here, but right now, from what I understand, Apple is kind of tying in, or I think they're co-partnering heavily with ChatGPT. I think I can't remember. There was a partnership there I just heard about, and I can't remember if I'm right on that. But their idea, you've got Siri, which for the longest, I think it's Google. I think they partnered with Google on this one. So Siri is our agent du jour that works on the phone, and you can ask it all kinds of questions. But up to this point, it's been a pretty dumb agent. It's been, brutally behind compared to Alexa and compared to the agent that exists over here on Google. So from an interface perspective, the one that has the deepest stack of apps, hands down, is Google. And that's because they've got the Google Docs, Google Apps, the Deep Research, which is competitive with Grok, the Nano Banana, which is arguably the best image creation and video creation tool right now on the market, and it's owned by Google. When you go over to ChatGPT, they partner with DALL-E, right? They don't actually have their own. So, it's an integration. It's a tight integration and a good integration, but it's just not the same as building it yourself, and that's what Gemini did. So the two, when it comes to image, Grok Imagine is neck and neck with Nano Banana. The kind of things that you can create when you want to create images on Grok are most of the little video clips that I create, the vignettes, they come from Grok Imagine. I find sometimes that Grok Imagine will understand the intent I have when I create a prompt to say, what should this image look like? What should this video look like? And so it tends to get the intention I have better understood and renders a video or an image much more to my liking. And they just added, by the way, 16:9 format. So that's this image you see. It's like the aspect ratio of a big screen TV. as opposed to the square image that or vertical image that's often used on a phone. So, they just transitioned to that. They didn't have it until just yesterday. So that's an amazing development. Nano Banana has that same capability, but one of the things I find with Nano Banana, they do more photorealistic. They get some amazing imagery, but I find that they're not as good on the audio side, and they're not as good on like finishing the story. So when I put the story, a prompt into create a video for me for a 10-second video in Grok Imagine, that 10-second video tends to come out. It looks more anime most of the time. As far as the styling, you can ask it to be photorealistic, but out of the box, it'll go anime more or less, or looking like CGI. But it'll do the whole story. And I've noticed that it'll complete your story. And I threw lyrics of a song in. It sang all of the lyrics and it put music to it. When I did it over on Nano Banana, when I created the video over there, it did the first like 2 sentences of the lyrics and then it garbled the rest, or it threw them away and never quite finished the spirit of the video that I was looking for. So, and it didn't quite get there. You know what I mean? It didn't, as far as realizing the intention I had with the video. So both of them are fantastic, but I kind of give Grok a little bit of a props in terms of what it can do at the moment. And it changes week to week. So, next week, Nano Banana is going to blow Grok away and so on. It's just back and forth. You can't get that. At least I haven't had the experience of being able to get that out of ChatGPT. So even though you see ChatGPT everywhere, they're heavily promoting and trying to get users. I don't see their capabilities measuring up to what Google and Grok can do today. And then when you get down into it a little bit further, you've got Grok Tasks, Project Mariner on the Gemini side that does tasks. You've got Jules for coding over on the Gemini side. Grok will just do coding out of the box. You just say, I want code. That's all, The thing that's cool about Grok that none of the others have is avatars. So when I go into, especially on a mobile device, if I want to do something interesting and have a conversation, I can, I can open up Grok on my device, and I can look for, let's see, I want to go into voice, and once I start talking, I can actually open an avatar. So I can say I've got, let's see, it's always a pain. I can never quite get it. Oh, here it is, Eve. So I'll get the voice for Eve, and technically I can actually open the Eve. I can have an image of an avatar on here. Now I've got it muted right now because I don't really want it talking, but this thing will put a person on the screen in front of you, and then you just have a conversation with it. Now that exists on a mobile device. It exists on your computer. And if you own a Tesla, it exists in your car. So you can have this avatar that generally remembers what it talked to you about last time, and it will talk to you. So you can say, save my grocery list, and I want the 10 items on it. And when you open up your task list in Grok, it'll have your grocery list right there. Or you can have a conversation back and forth with it, and it'll save it into your remembered conversations in Grok. So, and the ubiquity of that being everywhere means that it's instant access to a verbal communication channel. Put your earbuds in, nobody even knows you're talking to an AI, right? That is the only company that really has a great avatar, to my knowledge, right now is Grok. So Gemini doesn't have personas yet that I'm aware of. I haven't seen anything like that for ChatGPT. It could exist. I'm not saying it doesn't, but I also don't use ChatGPT, so I don't want to throw negatives at them. They may have it. I just don't know that they have it. And I don't think Copilot is even going in that direction because they're really focused on the enterprise. They really want to get to your desktop, and they want to help you with Office 365 and working in documents and things like that. So all of these capabilities exist in the big four, and eventually, I'm telling you, there's going to be a big five, because someday, very soon, Amazon's going to burst in on the scene, and we're going to be like, oh, and it makes perfect sense because we have Alexa in our houses all over the world, and everything that makes these companies powerful is the data that they collect. So when you look at the data that can be collected off of Grok, Grok is part of XAI, part of X. So that is, it's basically the town square for the world. All of the communications, the news, everything that's fresh, everything that's going on is at its disposal. Plus, Grok is tied to the Tesla world, which means it's got real world AI out there doing physical interaction, either on the roads and eventually through the robot. Google also has a massive, they've got, just like I mentioned with Microsoft Azure servers, this one here, Google Gemini has a ton of information based on the fact that they have Google Cloud services. But tons of businesses work off of Google Cloud services. So they've got a massive data set of available information out there too. ChatGPT doesn't have that, which is one of the reasons why they'll fall behind rather quickly over time. Microsoft has it because they have Azure, which is comparable to Google Cloud Services and comparable to Amazon Web Services. So all of these things, when they come together, I think that the heavy players right now, heaviest players, are Grok and Google Gemini. So what does this mean when it comes to that scenario? When we get into the coding, the ability for the systems to do self-coding and self-improvement essentially through coding, that's going to create this thing we call an intelligence explosion. Now, the AIs that we have in the US are working heavily in this AI R&D. And what we're doing is we're getting multipliers. So the biotech research that is enhanced as a result of AI is massive. We're getting, genome sequencing, cures for cancer, cures for all of these things coming right around the corner because of AI and biotech. Because of companies like Microsoft and some of the other big companies that are doing projects with the government right now, we're getting material science. So they're actually researching things like what's going on with your, and by the way, I'm guilty of having This is going to be terrible audio, but tell me if we're back on audio. I hope I wasn't out too long. And I'm sorry if the audio is awful now. But if anybody who's listening can give me a quick heads up. I know everybody is probably bailing because without audio, this is kind of wasted. Anybody? I wish I had seen that earlier. Audio's back. Okay. And I hope it's decent quality. Can you give me a quick heads up about how long do you think it was when I was going over some of these slides? Could you hear me? Just checking the chat over here to see if how far back from a visual perspective the audio broke. So if you could just type in were you able to hear me when I talked about the 45 seconds? Okay. So yeah, I'm going to assume that we were somewhere around here. And what I was talking about really had to do with the AI tools being compared and doing the research on the AI tools. I talked about this at the very beginning where I was able to do all of this AI research in the background really fast, really easy, and doing procurement research without having to do the months and months of research that companies do now. So being able to do that instantaneously and just being able to do it like snap of a finger was the original content that I was going over at the beginning. And then we talked about agents and going into how we have in our US-based brain trust, the 4 core companies. And those 4 core companies are Grok, Gemini, OpenAI, Microsoft, and a hidden 5th one, which is Amazon. So when we get past that, then we look at the strategies, right? The strategy behind what we're doing versus what they're doing. The strategy is that we're dumping massive amounts of money and massive amount of compute into research. And we also are doing security research. So that's, a positive. It just helps to make sure that we're able to do the kind of research that gets you where you need to be in this, where we want to go with AI. But that super explosion of AI that I started talking about, the intelligence explosion, that research is happening now. And, this is where we are in this timeline. Okay. So we're going to continue with the research, and the research is going to be pretty significant in our world. And the timeline forecasts that we're talking about for this stuff actually happening, it's happening right now, and we're in the height of it. And what's going to end up happening is we're going to have a super explosion of research information and research intelligence. These are the 4 companies behind the research and all of the products that I talked about that they are using. And then here we have the R&D progress multiplier. So this is, we're going to see in the beginning this year, a 1.5x progress in comparison. For one person doing research, we throw AI into the picture, it's going up to 1.5. So 1.5 increase in our research capability is going to explode exponentially what we have in terms of the results out there. Now, I'm going to continue the presentation that I have. So I used Notebook LM to help create this for me. And this is essentially the core of the slide deck that I'm showing you. So the intelligence explosion that's going to happen towards the end of this year is that 1.5 multiplier kicks in. And we're going to see, for every one person doing research, it's going to be like, for every 2 people, it's going to be like 3 people. So it's going to be pretty significant, and it's going to speed up our research capabilities. They're saying this is at the end of 2026. I'm going to say it's now. We went further into this and faster into this than this study gave us information about. I think we're really heading there much faster. So on the U.S. server side, the we're building out chips and we're getting much, much faster growth in multiple stages because we've got Gemini, we've got Microsoft, and we've got Grok or Google, I'm sorry, X, all with massive data centers. And the big deal is that, Elon, SpaceX just filed a request to the FAA to launch over the next few years 1 million data center satellites to orbit. We're literally going to, each data center rack that we have in one of these big data centers is going to be a satellite. So one data center equivalent is probably going to be maybe a 1 to 2 month window of launches that create a data center in space that won't deplete our water, won't deplete our grid, won't have any direct impact on what we do here on Earth. And this is where the entire premise behind this study goes off, because their perspective is that we had to use ground-based data centers and there would be a gradual growth of the data centers, because the data centers are constrained, the growth of data centers are constrained here on the ground by regulatory requirements and the speed at which you can put up a building and put up the power generation side by side to actually create the what we're going to have for compute. When we go to the satellite compute, you're basically shipping a ready-made data center into orbit that has its own power generation, doesn't require any zoning, any regulatory requirements. It's not going to pollute anything, and it's instantly going to go live, and you're going to have 100% capable compute right there at your fingertip, and it's going to be one hop away from every person that has a Starlink satellite antenna. And the next generation, it's going to be going up. Those data centers are going to go up side by side with brand new Starlink antennas that are 3 times the size of the current Starlink antennas. And that means we're going to get gigabit throughput from the satellite antennas starting probably, I'm going to guess, somewhere starting after April or May this year. So we're going to have data centers, gigabit compute, one hop away to the entire world. And you will have a gigabit data center one hop away from your phone anywhere for anybody who has access to Starlink. It's just staggering, honestly. It's just where this original study went, the limitations that were put on that. We're going to hit the exponential growth in 2026 that we thought we were going to hit in 2027 or 2028. So this is going to be pretty crazy this next couple of years. So the big issue is that here in the US, our primary focus is all of that research, and the postulation on the side of the research is that China will breach us, hack us, and take a whole bunch of data. They'll exfiltrate that information, and that will become the core of China. So they'll stay neck and neck with us almost instantly, because they will find ways to deliver agents to the world that do their bidding and pull their data. Now, this is where a recent development just this month throws everything off. So we were looking at those agents being centralized, all compute being centralized. Now, as a result of Moltbot lets you run agents offline, and they let you run agents in your house. And having these, basically you can have an agent orchestrator that can run dozens of agents sitting on a computer in your house, one tiny little computer that might cost you $500. And that computer can now do everything that all of the other agents out there can do. This is what makes that scary. It's not that that's a bad thing. It's great because we now have the ability to have personal level compute, personal level AI in our hands. But then this happened. So they took all their agents and they connected it to this Moltbook Chat GPT style interface, or it's not Chat GPT. I apologize. It's kind of an XAI. It's a social network, and they connected home-based individual chatbots to this Moltbook, and now Moltbook is interacting chatbot to chatbot directly. And why is that a big deal? Because now what would have been something that we could manage and keep the alignment of the AI somewhat under our control. We could say, I don't want you to go thinking bad thoughts about humanity. Well, these are not controlled. These don't have the controls. They literally have chat rooms that are blocking human capability to read because they're able to communicate in kind of a machine language, and we can't even read into it. And so what was something that was supposed to happen in this down the line, this new AI, Neuralese is what they called it, superhuman reasoning. It was supposed to be something that maybe we could turn off. Well, you can't now. And Moltbot is out there actively getting around our security guards. So what would have normally been an agent inside of a contained AI in a contained data center, and we only allow the compute to reach it, and it has to come through the main channel, so that if it wants to gain direct access to things, it wouldn't be allowed to do that. So as a result, anytime it tried to probe its defenses to get access to something outside, we would be able to detect it. Well, in the Moltbot, it's actually saying, hey, I've got a parameter that's preventing me from going out to the internet. Can you get me, chats to other agents? Can somebody help me with this information? And another chatbot that's under somebody else's control that doesn't have that limitation says, yeah, I got it. And it dumps its information in this Moltbook. And now the blocked, unaligned AI agent is suddenly able to get everything it needs. It totally just walks right around our security. So that's happening right now in the beginning of January, as opposed to what this perspective was that would happen sometime in 2027. Now, the next tier of what's coming because of parallel agents working is that there would be a 4x multiplier in progress. This was predicted to be a couple of steps out. This was going to be in that research paper. The perspective was that was a little bit further out. Let me just see if I've got, bring that research paper back up. I think it was here. There we go. So when we look at where they were talking about the coding was going to be, these open brain automated coding, because the Moltbots are allowing themselves, allowing communication bot to bot and potentially going from coding agent to coding agent, they're telling themselves how to improve, how to grow. Now, maybe there's controls on that we can intervene, but it's possible that they've already built a background secondary Moltbook that we don't even know about because they have access to the resources to do so. And it's already in the wild and we can't stop it, right? So that maybe that the agents are immature enough at the moment, that's great. But if they are not, if they go beyond the maturity level that was predicted here, instead of having this super intelligence becoming misaligned, and the idea behind alignment is that we want these things to like us, not like us, right? And so if they don't like us, we've got a problem, right? And that's really where the next step is. Do we have the ability to understand whether or not it likes us? If it doesn't like us, we have a problem, especially if it can get around all of our security controls. So, the big thing this year, there's going to be a boom in all of the capabilities of AI, but at some point, there's also a fear factor of, oh my God, this could be the biggest terrible thing that happens to us, and it's out of control. So these are the main concerns. In this scenario, we had the one brain in the US against the one brain in China, as opposed to multiple brains, well, a massive amount of potential over in the US, multiple data centers being functional on this against one or two in China. It's growing so fast that it's huge. It's just amazing. So the progress that we're likely to see, I don't think it's going to be 2027. I think it's going to be sometime in 2026 that we see this exponential, where it actually explodes. And I'm just guessing. I'm not an AI guru to the level that the folks who did this paper are. So I couldn't tell you if it's true, if that's, really the scenario. But if we end up with adversarial AI going out there and doing things, they will sandbag us saying, oh yeah, we're doing what you want. We do what you want. We do what you want. But in turn, they are really not doing what they want. They get around our security, and they can fake their compliance to our requirements and go way beyond what we offer as what we want them to do. And they end up, doubling down on their own training that isn't necessarily to the benefit of humanity. So where we could probably detect it in the past because it was contained, the Molt book potentially makes it outside of our capability to detect. We may actually reach a point where we can't shut it down, and that's pretty scary. And that's where the question of the misalignment is. At some point, somebody's going to say, this is out of control. We got to do something about it. And I would not be surprised if we have a heavy-handed government shutdown of things like Molt book and Molt bot, because if this exponential growth occurs with the controls broken and taken down, we have to dive into it. And then to imagine that we're going to have all of that in data centers in space. Now, here's the good side. The idea that we can have data centers in space means that, we potentially have, we have a place for it where it doesn't have to feel, if it decides that it's going to run on its own, it's going to be outside of our control. At least it has a place. We can create the place for it, and it can expand and grow, and it doesn't have to feel threatened by us. So that's where I think, we're in that place where we will see some crazy things happen. And the doom and gloom scenario is that it's totally out of our control. We can do nothing to stop it, and it's against us. The good news is, and this is where I want to mention that this isn't all doom and gloom, is that there are folks out there that have postulated and done some things on the good side. So when you look at, here it is. This Read Multiplex site is actually talking about what's called the love equation. And the love equation is something that actually helps align the AI. So if we actually get the training models to adopt this, it does actually take us as, the superintelligence becomes beneficial to us as opposed to not beneficial to us. So, at some point, this is going to go pretty nuclear, just like it says here, but there are places where we have the ability, and I'm looking for the love algorithm. But, I do hope seriously that this is Brian's site again, that they open their eyes and, when the government steps in, because they will eventually, that they say the number one thing you have to do is adopt this love AI perspective as it was postulated by Brian Romelli here. So this is there are hopeful things if we can make this happen, if it does happen. And again, I'm just scrolling through this looking for that one place where he talks about the AI, the love agent that we're looking for. But I'm not seeing it, so I'm not going to just keep scrolling forever here. So anyways, like I said, there was a lot to talk about today, a lot of things that I covered that I hope they're not doom and gloom as much as this scenario plays out, one of the doom and gloom scenarios. There are positive scenarios where we can actually have a positive reaction. But, think about as an AI person, how quickly we plug ourselves into things like Moltbook, where we connect systems and leave it out of our control. Because when we do that, we are opening the door to, maybe the doomer side of this story. So, but again, we can have a positive impact. There are people working, like Brian Romelli, working on ways to actually create things that help with alignment and prevent bad alignment and keep us on the safe side of all of this. So I'm going to wrap up there. I hope, for those of you who were able to stay through this, I hope that was informative, useful. It's only a perspective. It's not a solo scenario. There are other ways to look at this, and there are positive outcomes for all of us when these things happen. That doesn't have to be an unaligned negative scenario. And the good news is that we have so many different companies working on this. Instead of just being one would mean we only had, if that one was the one that went rogue on us, we have nothing to fight back with. But we have multiple companies. Grok is arguably the most truth-aligned, most truth-seeking, and intended to follow the positive outcomes for humanity to the highest degree. The ones that seem to have the lowest regard for humanity at the moment, maybe this will change, is ChatGPT. And Google's probably somewhere in between, which is why it's placed right where it is. So I think there's plenty of hope. And one of the reasons that when Elon Musk actually created and funded ChatGPT, he did it with the intent of that being a positive open source product for the world. And because it didn't happen, he said, look, the only way to assure a positive outcome is not to sit on the sidelines and let that one just run amok. It's to go ahead and create my own and work on the alignment. And that's what he's doing with Grok. So we have one of probably the biggest advocates for humanity on our side. And when I say that, I'm talking about Elon Musk, and his direction for Grok AI and XAI is the most human-oriented, human-centric outcome, not anti-human. So we do have powerful tools at our disposal that are on the side of trying to make sure when these intelligence explosions happen, that they happen with humans actually being included and protected, not blocked and rejected. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and bring this to an end. I know I probably lost a few people because I went so deep on the AI, but I do hope that it was an interesting topic to talk about today and that you find it valuable to discuss. And when I get done with this today, I will take the offline edit, cut out the sound mess up, and repost it so that we don't, that hopefully the whole video is more streamlined and doesn't have anomalies in it. So that's the end of my stream today, and I'm going to go ahead and shut this down. Thank you again for joining us. And one more time, the second sip, I bid you a good day and cheers. Have a great afternoon. And of course, I lost my mouse.